Good morning, everybody. This is the House Agriculture and Forestry Committee. I'm Representative Carolyn Partridge, and I am coming to you from my home, my snowy home in Windham. And we are taking up this morning the Bill H-58, which is an act related to creating a right to repair agricultural equipment. And the lead sponsor, Representative Emily Kornheiser, is here. Emily's from Brattleboro, and Emily, welcome. And do you know everybody on our committee?
Yeah, I think I do. Good to see you.
All right, great. Otherwise, we'd introduce ourselves to you, but why don't you go ahead?
Good morning, Emily Kornheiser for the record. I'm a rep from Brattleboro, as Chair Partridge said. I'm going to start by just sort of telling you my thinking in introducing this bill and leave it to Legislative Council to get into the nitty-gritty of it with you if that's what you decide to do. So I have been interested in right to repair more broadly for quite a while. I think we have, I think we could probably all agree that we have an outsized stream of waste in our country and in Vermont. And that Vermonters especially often are really sort of we're very much a do-it-yourself culture. And we like to fix our own things. We like to be able to fix our own things. And we have a long culture and a long background of sort of taking care of our neighbors, of helping each other out, and of trusting the person down the road who helped us out with a thing before, and perhaps even helped our parents out with a thing. And as our technology has become more and more complex, and as that has consolidated to fewer and fewer corporations who create that machinery or technology, we have less and less of an ability to actually repair those things ourselves. And I think often our children don't even understand that, and we actually don't understand the technology that we use or are able to repair it ourselves. And so that can be everything from a small battery that we're not able to replace, so that the entire item either needs to be disposed of, or I think when this happens in other places, like say if this happened in New York City, we would actually have a manufacturer to go to get this replaced. But I don't know about you, I have a lot of things in my home that are under warranty that if I want to actually have the warranty be covered under warranty, I have to mail them very far away. I have to pay for the shipping of this very heavy thing. I don't actually have the ability in my own life to go get that thing repaired by a manufacturer because of how far my home is from, you know, main places of commerce. I think when we think about the right to repair agricultural equipment, this issue becomes even more outsized. You know, the history of farming in America is a history of reckoning with debt and the relationship between debt and independence. The increasing purchase of sort of large-scale farm equipment, I think, moved farmers deeper and deeper into sort of, you know, a difficult side of that ratio between debt and independence. And now, as agricultural manufacturers are getting a tighter and tighter grip on the repair of that equipment, it means that that dependence on the debt goes further and further and further. So what we're seeing is that after warranties expire on agricultural equipment, the repair on that equipment becomes harder and harder and harder. It's still not even owned by the farmer. And so by allowing a right to repair agricultural equipment, and I think it's important to note that the National Farm Bureau had this as part of their legislative platform last year. And it might have been this year too, but it just happened 2 weeks ago, and I haven't been able to find a report about what happened on their conference a few weeks ago. By allowing a right to repair, that means that farmers can learn how to repair their own equipment. And that's things as simple as like a blinker on a piece of equipment. It's not like massive software redesign. It means that repair shops in your community, in your county, would be able to get the equipment that they need to do repairs for you. And it means that farmers wouldn't have more lost time when a piece of equipment does go down, because they would be able to service that quicker than either waiting for an appointment at a licensed manufacturer, which we have less and less of in our area, or being able to, being able to find someone else to do it. So that's sort of the broad outline of why I put this forward to you. It's an issue I care about broadly, and I feel like it's the most poignant in the farming community. But I will really leave it to you to figure out some of the finer details on it, because that's what you all know about.
Thanks, Emily.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. I'm wondering if any of the committee members have questions. And Emily, you'll find that I am a little bit, I'm informal, so I refer to people by their first names, and I hope you're okay with that.
I am so okay with that. Thank you.
All right, so I have 3 questions. The first hand up was Henry Pearls, and then Tom Bach, and then Rodney. So Henry, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I don't know if it's it may be a question for Ledge Council, but just also a comment. Because I don't know if this would apply, but we have a farm here, and we're pretty tried and true John Deere people. And I have had a tractor. We had a farm accident. It got some damage to it, but because the insurance claim had to be paid out to because the tractor was not owned yet, it's still got a note on it. The insurance check had to be made out to Harvest Equipment, and I could have fixed the tractor very easily here and been compensated for my time, but I had to wait 3 weeks, then have it sent up there. It costs way more. And I'm just wondering if this is the sort of thing that would include insurance companies and stuff, because it seems like a perfect example, because it just seemed foolish, but because they were but I understand why they need it fixed by somebody that's certified or something, because they don't want some guy they still kind of own the tractor. I'm just wondering if this is kind of the same situation, or if it would have to be an owned thing, or how that whole part would play out. And it's a little complicated, but
I think the nuance of that would be up to your committee to figure out with Legislative Council, and to see how far you might want to expand this. I think, though, it is a great example, because you just described it as sort of foolish, but it's possible that, and maybe this is also true and you didn't mention it, that you actually had crops that you needed to get in, it was about to rain or snow, whatever it is, and you would have experienced significant financial loss because of that wait.
All right, thank you. Tom?
Emily, are you thinking mostly of software problems, kinds of, in the letter we got from the equipment dealers or equipment manufacturers, that seems to be their biggest concern, that farmers and whatever machine owners will get into this equipment, alter the software, and cause all sorts of problems with them and in the future. And when the machine gets traded in, no one knows what's happened. There could be safety issues with it. Is it primarily software you want to see change, or is it changing a tire or a blinker? I don't know. These things are quite different in nature.
Well, that's actually sort of the problem, is that they're not quite different in nature anymore, because every last component is connected to, and like my grasp of technology words is for like the motherboard, essentially, And so if you want to change a blinker or change a tire, the same way on your car, it's often linked to a piece on the motherboard. And so on our cars, we, when I get sort of like the low tire signal, the low air signal in my tire, or something else signals me that it's wrong, I can fix it myself, or I can go to Doug Richmond down the road to fix it. And then I can go somewhere else and just have this sort of software reset, right? Or I can reset the software myself if I have the piece of diagnostic equipment to do that. So it's not like, reprogramming the essential piece of software. It's just having the ability to let the software know that I have a right to change a light bulb, and that I have done so. So it's really hard to divide it between those two things. We're able to sort of shut down our computers and reset them to factory settings whenever we want. But that's something that right now, the way that farm equipment's set up, you're actually not able to do that.
And I'm curious, are other states doing this, other farm states?
Yes, and I figured you would ask me that, and I have it written down somewhere, and I'm not sure exactly where. So I will find that in my notes and tell you, but yes, many, many farm states are taking this on. And as I said, it's one of the national priorities for the Farm Bureau. I will send you that list of states that have taken it on because there is one somewhere.
Thank you, Emily.
Yeah.
Do you have a follow-up, Tom?
No,
Okay. John O'Brien.
Hi, Emily. So is this mostly like a liability and insurance and financing type issue? Like are there statutes right now that prevent farmers from doing this, or is it the, you know, the original seller and whoever financed, you know, the tractor? Because I can see from, I mean, it's one thing if it's a blinker or a tire, but you know, if you were a farmer, you repaired some, you know, a mowing machine yourself that actually somebody technically else owns, and that later on, you know, hurt somebody, I can see it being a massive liability hot mess. So I just wondered, is that what we're sort of diving into here, this whole sort of liability finance responsibility issue?
So I think you could separate the issues around farm equipment that still has a note attached to it from farm equipment that the farmer now owns. I think those are, you know, I think that's an important thing to differentiate. If we just use the example of farm equipment that's owned by the farmer, the manufacturers are still limiting a right to repair because they're not allowing access to the software and software resets. So with John Deere, I think is one of the best examples of this, but a lot of other manufacturers do it. If you sort of mess with something just a little bit, it will lock down the entire piece of equipment so that you can't use it at all, even though you've just tried to change a light, until a licensed manufacturer. So it's, from my perspective, and it's a little intimidating to be talking to so many farmers about this, and I really appreciate how many of you all like are on this committee right now. I think that's very cool, but it's also a little intimidating. It's a conversation about about manufacturers' ability to have sort of a monopoly lock on who touches your equipment as a farmer. And even within that, I think when we get into sort of the separate issue of when it's owned by the bank, or if you're sort of paying to the manufacturer, that's a separate issue because it is about sort of who owns it and then who gets to mess with it. But I'm talking about when you actually even own the equipment, whether or not you're able to do minor repairs yourself. So
the parallel would be mechanics versus dealerships with our cars, for example.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
That's
Thank
a great
you.
way to explain it.
And Emily, I see Rodney's hand is up, but I just want to clarify. So even when a piece of equipment is out of warranty, like the warranty's done, you're still not allowed to fix stuff. And if you try, it will shut the piece of equipment down.
Yes, isn't that outrageous? And
Yes.
so the licensed dealers or licensed folks who are trained have special key codes that they put in that sort of allow them to get into the equipment. And those who don't. And my understanding, and again, not a farmer, you all are much more knowledgeable on this than I am, is that we have a real shortage of technicians in Vermont and people who can really come to the farm and help with stuff. And only allowing technicians who go to the dealerships and are licensed by the manufacturers really decreases the ability for technicians to learn this stuff, because you can't like learn it from your neighbor or learn it in an apprenticeship program. You need to get shipped off to the manufacturer to learn it.
Thank you. All right, Rodney, and then Tom, your hand is up again. Are you?
Yes, I have
okay.
another question.
Okay, I'm going to mute myself because my phone's ringing. Go ahead, Rodney.
Rodney, you're muted. So I can't hear you. Rodney, I can't hear you.
Rodney, you're muted. Unmute yourself.
Unmute myself. All right, sorry. So maybe my equipment's just too damned old, but I bought a new baler last summer, 2020. It does have electronic components on it, but I can fool with it as much as my capabilities are, but it don't lock down on me. I don't have tire sensors in my tractor tires. I've changed tires all the time. We change light bulbs all the time. We change oil. If you get into computer issues, we don't have the tools to diagnose that. And dealers generally have to send somebody out to the manufacturers to learn how to run the repair equipment, the computers to diagnose the problem. So I don't think every farmer is going to go out to Detroit, Michigan, or wherever they make to learn how to run these tools. So I'm not sure what you're looking for. I mean, what kind of, maybe John Deere's are different. I don't know. I don't own John Deere's, but just saying, I don't see where, I don't know. I just
Well,
don't.
I think if we decide to take this up, Rodney, that it would make sense to have some of the folks in to hear about this. All of our equipment is really old too. One of our tractors is older than I am. That's saying something. And it still runs just like I do. But I think if we were going to pursue this, we would want to hear from some of the folks who actually produce this equipment to see what's what, and we'll make that decision. Tom, you go ahead.
Just a quick thought, Emily. A lot of this farm equipment has gotten to be very sophisticated, very expensive. We have spraying machines that will spray different amounts of pesticide and herbicide on different parts of the field. They know this, the machines know the soil, and this is a function of the software. And this is proprietary. I can see changing a light bulb, saying changing a tire, and Rodney doesn't want to go running around. He's going to change his own tire and his own light bulbs. But I respect the ownership of the software. Do you understand that? So in other words, if you were to write a textbook, let's say, and you sent it away to a school and they didn't like the last 3 chapters and they changed it, you would have the right to deny them use of that book. And I think this is very similar, is it not?
Trying to decide if I want to work with your metaphor or not. So I think this is more a question about controlling what conversation we have about the textbook in the classroom afterwards and what papers we write about it, and whether or not the textbook manufacturer has a right to those conversations and those papers. So I trust farmers to decide whether or not they have the capacity to, work with their own equipment, and whether or not they know enough to do things to it and to take on the own risk of their own equipment the same way they do every day with taking on the risk of their farm animals and their land and whatever else they're growing, right? I trust the farmers to understand the risk that they're taking and do the work that they do with objects that they own. The right to repair legislation doesn't actually interfere with copyright laws and the ability to sort of duplicate that copyrighted software. And I will send you follow-up materials that say all of this in more detail. I, didn't want to flood you before I even showed up, but it does not mess with the sort of the essential copyright issue that I think you're talking about with both your textbook metaphor and with sort of your concerns about software. It's still absolutely copyrighted and can't be duplicated.
All right, Terry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, definitely we'll need a lot of discussion on this from both sides because, well, I'm just thinking of tractors that I've had. They're, we've did all of our own repairs pretty much, or my nephew did. But they were old and they weren't terribly electronic. But I've watched some of the my friends that are farming right now, and these tractors, I mean, with the GPS and everything, I mean, they can basically drive themselves. I mean, you don't even need to be in the tractor. I mean, it's pretty crazy the technology that they have, and just some of the equipment that regulates how much fertilizer and how much insecticide. I mean, they're all programmed for that. So unless you are an exceptional farmer, I think you're probably wise not to be messing with it. But I think it's a good discussion to have, because I mean, there certainly are some farmers that can repair a lot of stuff. I mean, I don't know about the light bulbs and the tires. I haven't been around that modern of a tractor lately, but that certainly would be something they should be able to do. But it's a good discussion to have.
Thanks. Can I add one? I think it's important to remember that I'm not just talking about farmers being able to repair their own equipment. I'm talking about local repair technicians being able to repair farm equipment for a whole region without having to necessarily pay the manufacturer to get trained, to be able to learn on their own through sort of, a usual apprenticeship program from whoever they've sort of, are working with, for them to be able to have their own expertise to work with your farm equipment, right? With a lot of these, a lot of this new technology, they're not able to do that. So you have to go to the manufacturer for repairs. I agree. A lot of farmers might want to learn how to do this. It's certainly it's a whole new skill set to learn programming. And so I'm not necessarily saying that we want to push all farmers into doing their own repairs, but I think it's really important that that's sort of part of our farming ecosystem of local repair people and their capacity to sort of, travel around our regions and do repairs is a really important thing to maintain for the strength of our farms. So it's that sort of middle person that I'm also really interested in having a right to repair.
Thanks, Emily. John and Tom, do you still have another question or?
No.
Okay, John, go ahead.
So I was just wondering if other states that have done this, if they're drawing a line in the sand over what we can call proprietary creep, that the manufacturers keep pushing, besides IT stuff, which most farmers or just consumers can't do. The manufacturers, right, can, if say on a tractor, they could put a sensor on your oil cap. So if you take it off, it shuts the whole system down, or that's the direction we're headed, just because they want to control every bit of a repair to their original piece of machinery. So have other states with this right to repair legislation, have they said, okay, IT stuff's one thing, but these other repairs you're allowed to do yourself, or just tell the manufacturers to stop doing this proprietary creep stuff?
That's exactly that's exactly the way to describe this. It really is about proprietary creep, and that it is drawing a line in the sand and saying, up to here, we are not infringing on your intellectual property, and we have a right to touch our own purchased product. You sold it to us and now we own it. You don't own it anymore. And sort of that's the line in the sand. I think a lot of the dynamics about what you'll hear from manufacturers is that they are going to say that they have gone sort of far enough and that they're trying to help solve the problem. And I think that might be true, but I think it's really important for us to sort of draw our own line in the sand about the future, especially in Vermont, where I think sometimes the future is happening somewhere else and we get a chance to see it before it comes here. I really appreciate that as a legislator in Vermont, that we can see the dynamics that are happening other places and sort of predict them a little bit. So it's drawing a line in the sand and saying this can't really go any further, that we need to have a right to this.
Great. Are there any other questions or comments for Emily? Emily, thank you so much for coming today and explaining this to us. We really appreciate it. And if you could, sometimes, you know, we don't like to reinvent the wheel. So if there are other states that have done this, maybe actually this legislation is based on legislation from another state. And if you could provide those states to us, then we could take a look at what they've done.
I will absolutely send you some follow-up materials. Should I send it to your committee assistant? Is that the best
Yes,
way? You all?
please.
Okay.
And our committee assistant, Mike Ferrant, is filling in today for Linda. We juggle with Senate Agriculture. And but do send it to Linda.
I will. Thank you. And thanks so much for taking the time to talk about this today. I really
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
take care.
You too. All right, committee, why don't we take a 15-minute break or so. And the Working Lands folks are going to come in. And so Mike, if you would like to put up the little page thingy, we will all please mute yourselves, because otherwise we're going to hear what you're doing. And also turn your video off. And we'll be back in about 15 minutes. Thanks.